welcome to the Popcorn Junkies. Let me do it without my glasses. Hey, and welcome to the
Popcorn Junkies.
We are here to review Damien Chazelle's Babylon. Now, this comes with a huge fanfare of trailers, Margot Robbie snorting cocaine, elephant poo, Brad Pitt in his pants, all sorts of wonderful stuff. But of course, Diego Calva, not really getting a look in the pre-publicity, I didn't think. And in many ways, this is Diego Calva's film. So Damien Chazelle, let's deal with the director first.
Okay.
So Damien Chazelle, Whiplash, loved it. Then he made La La Land, which we all loved. But then I begin to wonder whether we were all kind of a bit mad. Because when I look back at it, it's a bit sickening.
It is a bit. And just think I had one of my very last arguments I ever had with my mother over that film.
Yeah, she hated it.
Like a proper argument, because she was saying that we never didn't make films like they used to in the old days, which is a bit of a joke when you think of this film that we're about to review, isn't
absolutely,
it? Yeah,
absolutely. Then he made First Man.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
How come I've missed that? That didn't have any music in it at all, did it?
And then, of course, Babylon is his next film. It stars Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, as I said, Diego Calva, Tobey Maguire. There's lots of subsidiary characters in there. Samara Weaving, Olivia Wilde, though I don't remember which one was Olivia Wilde.
Olivia Wilde.
Yeah. And it's a huge ensemble cast, and yet really it does just pivot around three main characters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's set within 1920s Hollywood, and as you rightly said, going back to the thing you just said, I kind of went into this thinking, is this about real people? Are these real characters? Are these real stars? Then I didn't really care, because I thought it was just an impressionistic portrait of 1920s Hollywood. And then I realised quite quickly with Fatty Arbuckle that they were kind of playing fast and loose with real and not real.
Yeah, I felt we were made to care. I mean, I didn't care before I went in, but then I felt I was made to care by the fact that some references were so specific, like the Fatty Arbuckle, and other ones towards the end of the film when he actually put up the names of certain actors and actresses that his cast had played. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose what he was doing here was it was a fictional telling of fictional actors within a factual portrait of Hollywood at a certain time. Okay, it's 3 hours 9 minutes long. I really liked the trailer. I got really excited. You didn't. You were really circumspect from the get-go. Whereas me and Nadia saw the first trailer and we were like, oh, wow. I mean, what not to like about something to do with Hollywood and cinema and filmmaking? And
one of the reasons was that I didn't like the trailer, though, was because I had a horrible feeling that Brad Pitt was redoing his usual shtick, which he does now. Whereas I actually really didn't think that in the film at all. I thought Brad Pitt was great.
Right.
And he's one of my few sorts of things all the way through that thought he got better.
Oh, right.
And I liked him. So that didn't stay the same.
I thought he was exactly like in every other part I've ever seen him in.
No,
I mean, that was my first... Well, I mean,
more heart.
Yeah,
Towards the end.
I guess so. We start with a huge 20-minute scene at the beginning, 25-minute scene, before even the opening title comes up, Babylon.
Yeah.
What did you think of that first 20 minutes, which was a hedonistic, nihilistic, bacchanalian party?
Yeah. I was willing to suspend judgment completely at that point. I thought, I must ask Mark if this is a single shot. No, because I thought, I had lots of sort of reasons that, because I'm not a film director or a camera person and know nothing about that aspect, where the camera was sweeping. I thought there's lots to do with that I admire. But that was all. I wasn't getting any feeling from my gut of what was happening and whether it was interesting or funny or partying or focusing on one person or another.
Yeah, no, I think I entirely agree. I mean, obviously we have the much talked about opening scene of an elephant shitting on someone, and
I like that. I must say, in the sense that I wasn't expecting it. I hadn't read that.
No, potentially wasn't expecting it. I just thought it was just so cynically placed there, and it was just so over the top, and it was all so unbelievable. And I mean, so much that I think the problem with this film is it doesn't know whether to say what it's showing is unbelievable or whether what it's showing is meant to be believable. And I think that's a real dilemma for it, because at times you think, well, is this nibbling at the edges of lunacy, i.e. it's projecting towards what, so elephants coming into parties and all that, and then you sort of think, well, is this literal? And I think it was purposefully trying to mine that furrow between reality, fiction, fact, what's on the screen, what's in real life. Yeah, just sticking with this opening 20 minutes. I had a real problem with this because it reminded me of that Paolo Sorrentino film where it started with a party.
The Great Beauty.
Yeah, and it started with one shot of the actor.
Yes.
It's one of the most sensational opening 15 minutes.
Yes.
And that opening scene was sensationally done.
It was.
And the reason it was sensationally done was it didn't try too hard to do anything other than focus on one man as he passed through the party.
Yeah, that was its mistake, maybe, this one.
Yeah, and I thought I could see what it was going for. It entirely missed it for me.
Yeah.
I found it, because I was talking to the guys after I saw it on my own, and they were like, well, what about that big scene at the beginning that you hear all that? And I was like, it ended up being so supremely choreographed, I was only looking at the choreography of it all.
Yeah.
Everything was contrived. So as the camera went by and there was someone it was all too perfect. It was all too controlled.
Yeah.
It was all too slick. It was all too... you know, then Margot Robbie landing in the middle of it. It was too. I mean, and this is something that when I think back to films like Whiplash and La La Land, everything is so controlled. It's so contrived. It's so choreographed. And there's choreography is good when it's a set piece dance piece, and this is a set piece of sorts. But it was so choreographed, as you say. I didn't care. It didn't touch me. I didn't feel anything.
No. Were we supposed to feel that it was a single shot, or was that just
no, not at all. I mean, there were some obvious cuts, but I mean, there were moments where he was pushing the camera around, and he'll have done those elisions where there's a sort of, but no, it wasn't. It was meant to be this sort of all-encompassing manifestation of awfulness and excess. You've got the Fatty Arbuckle scene, you've got death happening there, and you're told quite quickly the way in which the studios will do anything to kind of cover up a scandal to keep the industry and the machine going.
It was an awful long-winded way to say that, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it went on.
It did go on. It went on and on and on.
So what did you think of Margot Robbie?
Well, I'm in a peculiar place over Margot Robbie, because Maddie always sort of looks at me when I say that and says, don't you think she can act? I do think she can act. I think she can do Margot Robbie, which basically is Tonya again and again and again and again. Or Harley Quinn. And I never see her do anything different.
No.
And she always sort of convinces me if I'm enjoying the film she's in. But she never pushes it in any way at all. And because she was playing a sort of, I felt, a really annoying character in this, I didn't feel anything. I like the man much more.
Diego Calva. No, I mean, I thought Diego Calva was great. So Diego Calva was this guy sort of with the fringes, wasn't he?
He was willing to do anything.
But he had no involvement with film. He just wanted to be in Hollywood. He wanted to be on film sets. He kept asking. No one would give him a job. He was Mexican, right?
Yeah.
Margot Robbie, aspirant actress, and because actually Fatty Arbuckle's actress dies, she sort of inveigles her way in and gets offered a part. What I did like about the film was the way in which it kind of, it didn't pull its punches in showing the purely non-creative industrial aspect of cinema filmmaking. So for example, when they both walk onto the it's the first day on set, they're going to go on set. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt's story is so you've got three stories. You've got Margot Robbie's, you've got Brad Pitt's, and you've got Diego Calva's, and they're all moving, and Brad Pitt is the established star, the other two are the aspirants. But they have this, I liked the introduction of the filmmaking process in Hollywood. I thought it was hideously unromantic.
Yeah, no, I like that too. And there were some sort of bits where he spent a long time on that some people would have thought were far more boring than, say, that first scene, like the scene where we're dealing with sound and Margot Robbie comes on with the bag, and he holds that throughout the whole procedure, and one could be going mad in the end, couldn't one? We're thinking just shoot it. But I thought that was great.
I'm pleased you said that, because one of my top scenes in it. So the first day on set, they're in this huge field, and I thought this was wonderful, and I thought, wow, I wonder if this was true. And they had lots of little, not even sound stages, but little setups where, because it was silent cinema, you can't hear anything. Lots of scenes have been shot. So you've got pub here, you've got cowboys here, you've got something else over here, Chinese laundry and all that kind of stuff. You had all of the kind of, politically incorrect kind of stereotypes around women, men, black people. We'll talk about that. That's actually the fourth story as well, isn't it?
And it's a good one.
And it's a really good one, I agree. And this is all happening in a field, and it was like a battlefield, wasn't it? I mean, Brad Pitt was in his tent, he'd come up, arrows would land. I thought there was a kind of comedy and farcical nature to all of that enamoured me. I found it quite charming, and I thought it was quite witty.
Didn't you think Brad Pitt, though, in those scenes was quite funny? In a sort of relaxed, I've been here a long time sort of way. I like Brad Pitt. I really like Brad Pitt, and I want to like him more in every part that he does. He misses his target with comedy. Well, I don't disagree that I think he went too far with it, and now he can't do it. But I did think as the film went on, he became sort of more serious, and I quite like that. Yeah,
there's quite a bit of introspection, I guess. So when they're shooting lots of these films, in the silent films, they have an orchestra going, I presume to get mood and kind of energy going. You can't hear it. And so, of course, Jovan Adepo plays the sort of trumpetist in the band. A character called Sydney. Let's call him Sydney. And Sydney's story arc, I thought, was fascinating, because it was dealt very subtly, but it was very meaningful. It was incredibly heartbreaking.
It was just, I felt it, I mean, in a way, it doesn't matter if it was true or not. There'd be lots of things that did happen as if it was true. But as I was watching it, my mouth fell open, because you could hardly believe what was happening, and he plays it amazingly.
There's one particular scene where he's asked by Diego Calva, sort of climbs up the kind of executive sort of levels, and then you have this moment where he gives boot polish essentially to him as a black man to black up more. Well,
he says the light's too big on your face because you're playing the solos, and so the people behind you don't look darker. So to keep in line with them, you've got to look darker. And you can see this bloke.
No, they hold the shot. I thought he held the shot wonderfully.
For absolutely ages. And right the way through the film, although there were bits that I laughed out loud at, and not a lot, but various things, I thought he was the standout person in it.
Yeah, no, it really was.
And
It
his
was really
story
good.
as well was fascinating.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, it probably occupies about 5% of the film, but it kicks through so powerfully. And I thought, again, you can see Damien Chazelle's obviously a jazz fan. He shoots jazz music so brilliantly. You know, there was invention. His editing style, his camera work, reflective of the music. It's really, you know, snazzy and snappy.
The other person that they tried to say was like the fifth person that was in it, like the black trumpet player, not as much, was the Susie Wong character, or the person playing the film star Susie Wong, who he meets Brad Pitt. No, I didn't either, Mark. But some people have talked about her a lot and saying she was exactly right and blah 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 blah. But I didn't either.
And so really, it's a film about lots and lots of these parties, lots and lots of film sets. Calva gets higher and higher. Margot Robbie becomes a starlet and becomes more and more unpredictable, more and more chaotic. She gambles a lot, she drinks a lot, she has sex a lot. She's always in trouble. And yet there's a strange bond between her and Diego Calva, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, they were together on the way up, weren't they?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, what I was struggling with in this was I didn't really feel the emotional truth of anyone. And I suppose you're kind of right. I think if there was anyone in it that gave us any emotional depth or light and shade, it was Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
I don't think Margot did. She just went.
No, she doesn't.
She just went like a rocket upwards and then blows up.
Which, in a way,
is fine because that's
But
there were no moments. It's like if I had another scene where she was sort of basically going nuts off her cocaine.
You're not a star. You're born a star. You're not made a star. You're born a star. I'm thinking, yes, okay, give us something different, Robbie. I mean, it's not your fault, but somebody writes us something different, for God's sake.
But I do want to say, you've already mentioned it. There's one particular scene where she has to do a million takes in a sound studio.
I love that.
She has to hit her mark. She has to drop her case. I thought this for me was just a brilliant scene. It's almost a short film. I thought it would stand out alone. You've got it from the POV of her getting hotter and hotter, learning her lines, hungover, whatever. You've got the sound recorder. So this is when sounds just comes. You've got the sound recordist in a box at the top. Now look, the amount of shoots I've been on where you've gone for so many takes, and because the sound recordist can't give it an all clear, you have to go again. Again. People interrupt. The first assistant director, floor manager guy is losing his shit and starts to say, "I will literally make you eat my shit."
Which I totally believed at that point.
The frustrations of the cameraman, because of course the reason the cameraman's in a box is because it's the sounding. The whir of the camera had to be considered. He kept coming out going, "I'm so hot in here."
I mean, this was LA, wasn't it?
And I thought this was an hysterical.
Absolutely.
And yet at the same time, incredibly true. I'd have thought that the crew shooting this scene would have had huge fun.
And also, absolutely true, Mark. And as the audience, because where that showed to me signs of a clever director.
Absolutely.
He kept it going to the end so that when they got the take, we all stood up.
We all stood up, and then I won't give it away, but then shit.
Yes.
Have they got it or not?
Yeah.
Very, very funny.
No, I did, which almost made me madder about the undisciplinedness of the rest of it. And the fact that I thought, the trouble with Margot Robbie
undisciplined is a really good word.
Yeah.
Because he's a great director.
I think he is, but I think he's I don't know. I mean,
he was like a Catherine wheel that's flown off its mark.
Yeah, I suddenly realised as well as I was about 3/4 of the way through it. Not that this means anything, but Robbie and Brad Pitt were both in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, weren't they? And in a sense, that was trying to do this similar thing, but doing it more restrainedly, very much more restrainedly.
I was also getting vibes around Hail Caesar with all the kind of film sets, you know, the Coen Brothers film.
Yeah, but then also, and this is where he's even worse than just undisciplined, is he took us on a complete arc, and at the end, I think he's also a very sentimental man. He brought us back to the sort of present as much as you can get the present, where Manny goes back into Hollywood.
Well, we'll get to the end of it. Yeah,
and that was totally...
Yeah, and also there was a really frustrating musical refrain, which has been lifted from La La Land. I mean, it was virtually the same chord. It was the love refrain between Diego Calva and Margot Robbie.
A lot of people spoke about them working up towards an analysis of Singing in the Rain. Mark Kermode went nuts over this analysis. He said anybody that says anything bad about Singing in the Rain needs to think again because it's my favourite film. Nobody was saying anything bad about it.
Anyone was saying anything bad.
They were just saying this is what happened before.
Yeah, and what he was saying was that Diego Calva was conscious of the fact that all of them standing in pink outfits was shit, and you needed someone like Gene Kelly doing it. Yeah, no, I didn't. No, it's not
totally weird.
What I would say the film then becomes, and there's so many kind of vignettes and scenes that you could pull at so many, but a couple that are worth mentioning is the fact that Tobey Maguire's in there. Great character.
My favourite scene, in fact. How could I have forgotten
Absolutely,
that?
And he reminds
just because of him.
Just because of him, he's horrible. This drug dealing, kind of wheeling, kind of.
I was so sort of taken with him. He always plays sweet guys. He always hardly in anything, and he's blue.
And he's got rotten teeth.
Let's just not beat around the bush. To the point where I went and looked up if taking a lot of ether made you blue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I thought he was
scary.
Hideous.
He was hideous, and then he takes them down into this ludicrous kind of dungeon because
he's
essentially they owe him money. He's the kind of dealer for Hollywood. He's just unspeakably foul. I was getting Dean Stockwell vibes from
Yeah,
Blue Velvet.
yeah. And you know the whole Milton thing of 7 channels of hell, and
absolutely.
his was
going
the
down into hell,
bottom.
and you know, there's sort of all sorts of people having sex and people punching each other, and a man eating a rat, and all this kind of malarkey.
Yeah.
And weirdly, I thought Tobey Maguire was powerful until he was down there, and it completely punctured its drama because it became them all chasing him.
Yeah.
And I thought it could have been much
He didn't know
cleverer.
what to do with it, did he?
I also thought the film became, in its arc, or it tried to be, but it didn't succeed at it, creating that same couple, because there was a point at which Diego Calva kind of just turned his back on his kind of film career to save Margot, which I didn't believe.
Yeah.
And it was
No,
a bit
no, I didn't
Goodfellas-y.
either.
It was a bit Goodfellas-y, the idea that they were being chased,
Yeah.
needing to escape their kind of shit that they were in and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but it wasn't done as well.
No, I would agree with that. He's not good at joining up the dots. He's also not good at keeping, if he's got, I mean, he'd got the 2 main characters with Brad Pitt on the outside doing his, I'm getting to be an older actor and I'm going to be introspective and you either believe me or you don't, which I started to, so that was fair enough for me. But I can understand if people didn't. But yeah, no, I just don't think, I think there's some things that he's very good at, but the things he thinks he's really good at, which are the sweeping scenes in the beginning, which he's got no restraint on at all. I mean,
It's
as
the
you
smaller
say,
scenes, it's the smaller setups.
smaller
I think
scenes
that-
he's better at.
There was one really powerful scene with Brad Pitt that I really want to mention before we sum up, and it was the scene with him and Gene Smart. And I thought, this was a really challenging scene where Gene Smart delivers some of the best written sort of dialogue of the film, I thought, where she talks about in Hollywood, you will die, I will die, we'll all die,
Yeah.
but there will be people in 70 years' time that dust
Yeah.
off the kind of reels, the projector, they'll watch you and you live on. And she said to him, it's over.
Yeah.
Your career's over. And there's an interesting parallel here because it's where Brad Pitt is at.
Yeah. Well,
And I thought he was, in his own way, channeling that
well,
realisation.
I thought that exactly. That's why I said it at the beginning. I thought, for good or for bad, or whether it was accidental or whatever, he felt that and he gave us it. And I thought, well,
It's the
good for
best
you,
acting
mate.
I've ever seen him
yeah,
do.
and me. It was all interior, mainly interior. So he stopped all this. I mean, he can be
hitting things
slapstick.
and-
Yeah. He's done all of that. But I thought, oh my God, Brad, you're an actor.
Yeah, and Gene Smart sort of
And what's
matched him.
more-
She sort of drew it out. It was a brilliant two-header, that scene.
Yeah,
I thought.
and what's more, he's becoming an older actor of Hollywood.
He's
So
nearly
the things that
60.
he was saying is true for him.
And so that gave it an even more sort of tragic
did.
thing. When something else happens at the end of the film, it's a sort of tragic kind of, oh my God, what happens? It's like footballers who, you know, their career ends at 40. You know, actors must hit a sort of peak where they go,
Yeah.
this is kind of it. That, you know, with streaming now, there's a kind of last hurrah for many actors.
Yeah.
But, you know, in terms of that kind of star power, I thought, wow, this will be digging deep into Brad. And I felt on that
Yeah.
big close-up. So that's a particular scene. So
He looks great as well. I think
Yeah.
he looks as well as I've ever seen
Yeah,
him
yeah,
look.
yeah.
He doesn't look young. He
No.
doesn't look like a young boy, but he looks like a matinee
Yeah, absolutely.
idol.
I actually thought when it was doing the dark, hell-like underbelly, it needed to be a bit grittier. I felt it was too
Yeah.
polished.
Yeah.
I wanted it more sort of mucky. I thought the sex was a bit just sort of
Yeah.
a bit romantic, kind of horrible rather than
Biting
horrible.
the heads off rats just to bring it in from somewhere must be a thing, because it's that thing that they did in the carnival, wasn't it, where a man bites the head off a rat.
Ozzy Osbourne used to do it as well.
Well, no, I know, but that's much later. But then I was sort of, because Tobey Maguire in himself just sitting there smiling, we'd had the alligator on the way there, was so scary. And then he drops it. He drops the whole idea. So we're thinking,
Yeah,
they
you're
started running around like Keystone Cops.
Yeah, it was like he's on Ghost. And then the final thing, which I nearly forgot about, was a beautiful montage at the end of the film. Which
Yeah,
really
what did
got
you
me.
think about
well,
that?
it really got me.
That's had critical acclaim
this is
and
the-
uncritical
Right,
acclaim.
well, this is the weird thing about it. It started really well, and I thought we're going to get a montage of all the moments from cinema.
Yeah.
And you did. And then suddenly you had a roller coaster, and then it went really abstract, which I'm a big fan of just washes of colour. It was almost like he ran out of clearances to use other films.
Yeah.
It was really weird. It started with a certain intention, and then it sort of lost its
Lost his
mojo.
mojo. I was with him up until the roller coaster because I suddenly remembered, and this subs was taking me back to when I was a very young girl and used to go to the cinema with my mother. And I have to admit, it was mainly to see South Pacific for the 50 millionth time. And that was in the days when films were on a constant loop,
right.
so
So you
you
go
went
in
in at any
halfway through
point.
a film, yeah.
And between the two films, they had a roller coaster.
Did they? I
They
never knew
did.
that.
No,
Oh,
they
wow.
did. And in a bit like the Steven Spielberg moment of seeing a train crash and it meaning a lot to him, this roller coaster
Oh,
meant
wow.
masses to me.
I love that
and I
detail.
suddenly thought, I said, oh, I've remembered it. I've actually got.
I'm not surprised.
But then he lost it after that. But I thought, well, up until that point, he was showing the history.
Because it would
of
cost a
something.
fortune getting those clips,
Yes,
the clearances. It
yes.
felt like he then ran out
Yeah.
of money. I was
Yeah,
like,
maybe
shit, I
he
need to think
did.
of something else.
Yeah.
But I thought the idea behind that. So
Somebody my age must have said, oh, well, we had deals used to do this, you know.
So I can't work out whether what carried this over a higher line or a more successful line
Yeah.
for me was just by sheer dint of the fact that it's set in Hollywood. I'm a big sucker for that kind of thing. I
Yeah,
thought when
right.
there were moments that worked, they really worked. I laughed out loud with the film scene. I was really moved by Brad Pitt in that moment. I didn't feel the rest of his character was particularly well drawn. There are sparks of it being well written. I thought Margot Robbie was unfortunately at the same energy all the way through the film, and that might be the case with certain characters off their head on cocaine. But even the drug taking didn't feel real. There was a sort of, it was like drug taking bacchanalian sex light.
Yeah.
Needed to kind of go. You needed a bit of Lynchian kind of.
Yeah, and also people like, I mean, who is it did Scarface and the old days when Al Pacino used to fall into a load of coke?
Yeah.
I mean, those things were gritty and
It was
scary.
romanticised a bit.
Yeah, but this was like, yes, there's parts of everything you could possibly want. Tobey Maguire is blue. Okay, that's just part of the.
I see Toby. I like that. So I love the scene where they just sat at the table. When it got into,
Yeah,
you're
I
right.
did too.
Joining the dots is a really nice way of putting it. He struggles with joining the dots. So interestingly, I came out of it not hating it as much as I thought I was going to hate it.
Oh, okay.
And actually finding parts of it remarkably enjoyable, and just fascinating, because I was just looking at, I wonder if this was the case. I wonder if this is how they made stuff. So, in summary, I would probably give this film actually 65.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what I'd have said if I'd have gone first, because I hated that first scene, the sweeping camera scene, and I sort of thought this is what we were going to get all the way through it. I do have I mean, it's not a big problem with Margot Robbie, but I do think she shows no development ever anywhere, and there was none in this.
It's being reflected at the box office. She needs a hit with Barbie.
Yeah. Well, they certainly need to do something with her. The guy was nice enough, the main guy, but that's all he was. The standout moments were the ones. I mean, Susie Wong they keep talking about, and she did do a good number in a club, lesbian number, which was famous. That number. There was that. And there was the black trumpeter was astounding.
Sensational. Yeah.
And then it was the odd moments, as you say, that sort of sound thing with her keep dropping her case, and yes, we've got it. Those were fascinating, and those were the bits that made me stay in the cinema and love those bits.
It was like skimming a stone, and every now and then, it was every time it hit the water, you'd go, ooh,
yeah,
ooh. But there were great sort of swathes of confused babble. Really.
Yeah, and
Babylon comes from Babylon, doesn't
it was quite full when I saw it at the Cineworld, and people didn't like it. You could tell they didn't like it.
Okay.
I mean, they were sort of willing to go with the I suppose in a way the disgustingness of the first scene.
Well, within the first 10 minutes, you've had an elephant shit all over one. You've had a woman pissing on a man. You've got vomit everywhere. I mean, it's a disgusting introduction to a film, and it holds you at arm's length. And it sort of, for me, it was quite angry. And then it went to this great long scene. I tell you what I was put in mind when the elephant walked into the party. I thought, Peter Sellers as the party did this better.
Oh, yeah, that's
true. Remember the elephant
true.
comes in at the end of the party?
Yeah.
It needed to build, I don't know, there was just something about it that was ridiculous.
There was. I mean, over the elephant scene, though, I mean, there's something I quite liked about the idea of trying to just take an elephant through the deserts of LA. I mean, even in itself, although who would have thought he'd have done that?
So
Mark, I hate to say it, but more or less the same as you. Oh. I might give it a slightly more, maybe 70, because I really did like Brad Pitt towards the end. I liked some of the scenes very much. I loved... Yeah, and I love the trumpet player. I've said that already.
If you're into, what I would say as a final line on this is, it's been panned and it's nosedived at the box office. It's not as bad as you think, especially if you're a fan of Hollywood. And the Fabelmans, just wonderful. A much more romantic film. This thinks it's gritty. It's not as gritty as it thinks it is, but it has some wonderful vignettes and moments in it, which are really thought-provoking. And I have to say, I think the Brad Pitt Gene Smart scene is top draw. Brilliant. It has all sorts of implications for what fame is about, and even the most successful sort of moneyed up people have to face these awful kind of their mortality.
And I felt in that moment Brad Pitt was facing his.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why it worked.
It was a perfect chain together of the two things. So I kind of hope for his sake he does get another big role.
He will.
Yeah,
he will. He's a movie star.
He's a movie producer too. Well, there you go. Babylon.